Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about trade deals. Did I say trade deals? I actually meant politics. But we are talking about trade deals because the winner for the poll for today was about, well, what happened to the Brexit trade deals we were all promised. So let's begin by reviewing what Liam Fox said. The guy responsible for getting our non-EU trade agreements in place. At the start of the process, he said in 2016 that we would be more attractive to potential trade partners outside of both the EU and its customs union. So we needed to leave the EU and not come up with a customs union either, and that would make us much more attractive. So, and that is the no deal default position. So as recently as late 2017, well into the Article 50 process, he said that our Brexit trade deals were the easiest in human history. And he said this for both trade deals with non-EU countries and the EU itself, because of course, no one's saying we don't want to trade with the EU. Interesting to note, a chap I've mentioned a few times before, Sir Ivan Rogers, former civil servant who's actually got experience of international trade deals. And he said that it would actually be the most difficult in human history because we're trying to diverge from the EU. What he's explained was that all trade deals are essentially about two nations, or a nation and trading bloc, converging their standards and systems to allow more trade between them. So it's all about convergence. This one's about divergence. We're saying we want to diverge from the systems and standards in the EU. That makes it unique in human history and not at all simple. And it's been proven that it's not that simple because we don't have one. In fact, we don't even have an idea of what sort of relationship we want. But that's all. There's also political reasons for that as well as legal. But when it comes to non-EU trade, if Dr. Fox thought that was easy as well, then I have an initial question. Where are our 40 trade agreements? Because as part of the EU, we have 40 trade agreements for nations around the world outside of the EU. Now, Dr. Fox's plan was simply to copy the agreements that we share as a member of the EU and get those same nations to sign up to them. Basically, where it says European Union, cross that out, put United Kingdom in. And you know, Brexiteers said that outside of the EU, we could negotiate better trade deals. Liam Fox even said in 2017, we could get better trade deals with the EU outside of the single market. Not quite sure how you get better than a free trade deal, but we'll leave that one in the mystery box for now. So a better trade deal with an EU nation would mean better terms for ourselves. Of course, that's what they mean by better. And by definition, that means not quite so good terms for the other side. So what they're actually saying is that we can get deals that are worse for the other side. So Liam Fox planned, as I say, to just copy those agreements across. Copying them across was clearly clerically and legally doable because he's managed to do it with 5 of those agreements out of the 40. And it's not 5 out of 40 as in, oh, well, that's an eighth of them done, which still isn't all of them. That actually only accounts for 2% of our non-EU trading goods. Now, 2% of our non-EU trading goods is approximately 1.2% of our trading goods, and much less than that when you consider the amount we make from services as well. So why haven't the rest of those countries signed up to them? After all it's a case of doing is getting it, verifying that it's exactly the same conditions and signing it. And in actual fact, you've got to remember, this means we're not looking for different, because that would take a long time. Even though Brexiteers wouldn't accept that, trade deals take a long time. They weren't accepting that it takes over 10 years. They said it'd be absolutely simple. But no, we're not talking about changing anything, keeping it the same. Which also means that when it comes to us exporting to them and them exporting to us, the systems would stay the same. By countries not signing these agreements, they're actually putting themselves out because there's going to have to be some extra paperwork required of their own exporters. So you would think, if nothing else, just to smooth things over, that those countries would be quite happy to sign agreements that are exactly the same as now. Just check that we haven't sneakily added something in. Just check it's the same text and sign them. Why not? Well, if all those non-EU countries were seriously thinking that we could get a better trade deal, the UK could get a better trade deal, surely they'd be quaking in their boots at the prospect they're suddenly going to get a worse trade deal when the marvellous, magnificent United Kingdom comes into town. Surely they'd bite our hand off to sign a trade agreement that's on the same terms as right now. But they haven't. And the reason why they haven't is because despite the hubris of the Brexiteers and those who voted for them, it turns out that the wider world isn't all that bothered about trading with us on those same terms that we had with the EU. Fox and his brigade may have fooled a significant proportion of the British public, but he hasn't fooled the far more world-wise ministries around the world. They know we're in a weak position outside of the EU. We're leaving the pack. We are weaker. And they can get a better deal from us when we're desperate. And we will be desperate. And I don't just mean economically desperate. I mean politically desperate. Those people that sold the Brexit promise that we could get great trade deals in order to retain any credibility whatsoever once we've actually left, have to get trade deals, even if they're awful for the UK. But that's okay. They've got that covered. They'll get their friends in the media to make sure they sell it as a good thing. So they've already been starting this weekend. So the equivalent of 48% of our non-EU trading goods has told us to sod off. So what will they deal for? If not the current terms, what terms do they want? Now, to simply say, well, they want us to have much worse terms, we'll be putting it mildly. So take the largest ones, China and the US. So China, for example, they might be quite happy with a free trade deal. That's because the UK manufactures products with hefty EU tariffs. Now, living in a steel town, I was mostly focused on this because that is the industry in the town I live. And it's an industry that would be wiped out in Britain if we had no tariffs on Chinese goods, because Chinese steel is much cheaper. We can't compete with that. We have higher human rights and environmental standards. That's all there is to it. So what are they suggesting? To stay competitive, we massively reduce the human rights of workers and steelworks and our environmental standards? Because, yeah, that's progress. And then Greg Clark, who is the Secretary of State for Business, no less, so a cabinet minister, he was saying that the ceramics industry has been subject to unfair competition due to cheaper imports from China. Now, he has a funny idea of unfair competition when he's suggesting what we need to do to make it fairer is to increase protectionism, but whatever. The point is that there are other industries as well that will suffer if Chinese tariffs are reduced still further, in fact, to zero, which is what they would quite like. So, and the UK has been considering doing this unilaterally anyway. It was talking about today massively reducing import tariffs on some goods, not necessarily all goods, but some goods, in the event of a no-deal Brexit. Up to 90%, ministers are saying. Now, that would, of course, harm our own producers. You'd be undercutting British businesses by doing that, because import tariffs is all about what comes into the country, not what leaves it. And, of course, it won't help our exports at all, except, I suppose, for some businesses, if they rely on raw materials, if they can import those cheaper, they may be able to stay more competitive, especially with a much weaker pound. That might be a hope there. But, as I pointed out before, if we have really, really low tariffs, we also prevent ourselves being able to negotiate trade deals because we've already given other countries so much. If we put very low tariffs on their imports to us, what is the incentive for them to concede something that allows us to get a better deal out of a trade deal? That's the problem. You set your stall too low, you give too much too early. What is the incentive for us to get a better deal out of it? So why are the government even thinking about it? If it's going to harm British businesses and it harms our negotiating position for trade deals later as well. Simple. It's a cynical attempt to try and prevent people seeing the full horror of a no-deal Brexit. Their thinking is that even if there are wholesale job losses, obviously those people are very much going to blame the government for Brexit. But not everyone's going to lose the job. There'll still be people in the country that have got a job. And if they can at least keep the cost of products in the shops down, obviously at the cost of reduced British items for sale, then it would affect less of the population. So at least those who get to keep their jobs may not suffer as well, so they reduce the size of the backlash. And this weekend, coming to the US now, they produced their little roadmap for a great deal with the UK. A huge market, which we absolutely want to get an agreement with. Of course we do. As expected, however, it's a great deal for the US. I mean, who would have thought otherwise? It's one of the few things that President Trump and his civil service actually agree on. Getting a deal that improves things for the US and US businesses at the cost of the UK. So one thing that's been widely reported, of course, is lower standards on meat in particular, and has been very much part of that. And also, don't imagine that we'll be able to beat them down on that. And that's because of lobbying in America. The meat industry, agricultural industry in general, actually, farmers are a huge lobbying force in the United States. There is no way America will sign any trade agreement with the UK post-Brexit that doesn't mean that they get to export more of that meat to us. And before I start on this, because I know what's going to happen to some Americans, I'm afraid you're going to get a bit irate going, you're trying to say that American meat is not fit for human consumption. No, that's what I'm saying. The stuff that's absolutely fine, there's some really good quality stuff, that can be exported anyway. That's fine. We're talking about the stuff that doesn't meet those standards. Okay? Now, the chlorinated chicken is a big example, and the Americans have been going on a charm offensive with it. And as I alluded to earlier, our British media have been only too happy to sort of play to this. Now, what they're saying is, you've got it all wrong about chlorinated chicken. The only reason the EU made it illegal is pure protectionism. Chlorinating chicken doesn't harm it at all, doesn't cause any harm to health. That is all true. I don't know about the protectionism thing. It may be true. Remember, the EU is protectionist, and it all sounds reasonable. Chlorinating chicken does not pose a health hazard to us. We chlorinate ourselves. When you go to a swimming bath, you're swimming in chlorinated water. If you go into the kiddies pool, you're getting a proper dose of it. Doesn't do us any harm. It's not the chlorinating chicken that's harmful. What causes the harm to human health when you're chlorinating chicken is three things we discovered, and this is why it was made illegal. One, those abattoirs that do this, they find that they tend to cut corners earlier in the process. Obviously, places like this, particularly chicken, if you think about it, it's hardly a luxury meat. You want to cut costs wherever possible. And if you can cut costs on hygiene, in the belief that when you're just going to douse it in chlorinated water at the end of it, that's going to kill the bacteria, surely. So it means they have weaker hygiene standards earlier down the chain. So then that's come on to that second point. So they think to themselves, oh, we're going to chlorinate it anyway, it's all fine. What's also been discovered is there's been scientific studies that find that the chlorination doesn't actually kill the bacteria. The harmful Campylobacter salmonella doesn't kill it. It suppresses it without killing it. So it's still there and still posing a harm to human health. And then you would say, well, the proof of the pudding surely is in the eating, if you'll pardon the expression. At the end of the day, do you have scores of Americans dying each year from eating chicken in this way? Yes. Do we in the UK? No. In fact, if you were to try and work out, well, you don't have to work out, you can look it up. But if you worked out, and I know America, of course, has a population 5 times greater than the UK, but it's more than 5 times greater. If you were to work it out in percentage terms, how many more people die from food poisoning from chicken, like salmonella specifically poisoning, it's thousands of percent greater than the UK. So, it's not absolute proof, but there are strong indicators that those places that use the chlorination of chicken, even though it's not the chlorination directly that causes the harm, does produce chicken that is harmful to human health in the interest of maximising profits or improving competitiveness, however you wish to view it. So, yes, although what that American said was true, that's not what the issue is, and that's deliberately ignoring what the actual issue was. And this is the problem when the media do not report these things. So, it won't be a great deal. There is another problem with it. Actually, when you read through the document, what you notice quite a lot in it is there's also clauses in it about favouring trade where the products are made in the US as well. In fact, it basically says that we have to accept more US products into the country than is currently allowed, and we get to export fewer of ours to the United States. So that one is a much worse agreement in the making. Very protectionist from their point of view, and in return, we get cheap meat that will kill some people and put farmers of better quality meat out of business, or force them to adopt these same slapshod procedures, and we increase the death rate. And don't think because it's clearly a bad deal for us that the UK won't sign it. Obviously, it's a starting position. We all understand this. You start off with what you know you're not going to get, but your starting position. But we're not going to beat much out of them. And as I say, on the meat standards, we're not going to get that out of them at all because, the farming is such a huge lobby in the United States. They simply won't allow their representatives to sign anything that doesn't give them a better deal on that, which means worse for us. And also, in terms of favouring producers that produce their products in the US, we already know in terms of Donald Trump's actions so far that he will stick to that one. And don't imagine that if he's gone in a couple of years and someone else comes in, they'll be different. Any American president, to be fair, you know, any American president should be coming up with the best agreement for the United States. They bat for the United States. It won't be any different with anyone else. So, you know, but we have to sign a trade deal with the US. It's the holy grail for us. Brexiteers cannot have any credibility if we do not get quickly. It's no good like, I mean, I could say, well, you know, we've been told by experts it takes over 10 years to come up with a comprehensive trade agreement. They didn't say that. Brexiteers not only promised better deals, but quick better deals as well. Soon as we left, we'd have them. That's what they said. So to retain that credibility, they have to come, and they have to come quickly. And the US is the holy grail, like I say. They've got to do it. They've got to accept it. And they've just, as I say, got to get their mates in the media to sell it to us as a good deal. Maybe they could chlorine wash it to make it look a bit fresher, eh? So the Brexit process basically has proven that other countries are not interested in deals that give the same terms as being in the EU. That's been proven because that's, you know, 35 trade agreements that have not been signed. And that's for exactly the same conditions that are existing right now. And that's been proven time and again because Liam Fox has been unable to get them. Countries have said no. And several large economies have already formally told us what conditions they're looking for in a post-EU agreement, and they don't bode well for either British producers or consumers either. So, and there is no, oh, we'll just wait till we've left and then it'll be all right. No. We should have had these things sorted out, and it was legally, clerically possible to get them sorted out before we left, and we didn't. Those countries do not want to sign them. There's nothing stopping them signing them, but they're not doing because they think they can get better deals, and they've said so. Anyway, I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content, and click the bell notification. And until next time, I'll see you later.